Well, welcome to another video in Ginger Jim's range of little videos we're going to look at. I've just returned from an open tournament I played at Sunningdale over the weekend, bank holiday weekend. A bit of an up and down tournament for me, really. I lost a game reasonably early on against Radonovich, who's a dangerous FM. He played a great game, actually. He played the King's Indian against me, and even though I had two queens on the board, I still managed to get checkmated. So I'll have a look at that game at another point. I can't actually find the score sheet for it, and I'm still a bit hazy. So the game I'm going to look at now is a game I had against Alexei Slavin. This was in the last round. Slavin was on 5 out of 6, and he needed to win to come first equal with Keith Arkle, who had a quick draw to reach 6 out of 7, and played very well over the weekend. I was on 4.5 out of 6, and I needed to win to have any chance to get any prize money. So everything's playful in this game. The round before, it was 2 games a day. I had a 130 move game, which I managed to win in the end, but I only had 5 minutes break in between the first round and this round, so I was a little bit tired, and it was quite but I just wanted to get on with the game anyway. And Slavin, well, I expect most of you know who Slavin is. He's originally from Russia, but he's moved over to England now. He's a very nice guy, and I think he's just got his IM title, so he's about 2400 strength, and he's improving at a drastic rate, so definitely not a player to underestimate. But this was definitely my best game of the weekend, and I think I played well in this game, which was quite nice. So anyway, let's have a look at what happened. Well, I was black. My opponent played d4, so I thought, well, I'd better wheel out the Dutch. I haven't played it for a while, so come back to my first love, and after knight f3, I banged out the move f5. So I was quite happy in the last round. I was walking around the tournament hall, and I saw a couple of games where people had played the Dutch. I'm not sure how they all got on. I saw a very interesting game where one player played an early knight h3, and his opponent played d6. I didn't catch the name out of play. I wanted to have a word with him afterwards, see how he got on. And there's some other very interesting games in the Dutch, which hopefully people will leave comments and tell me how they got on anyway. But it's good to see the Dutch have been played a bit. Anyway, on to the game. My opponent played g3. So basically we got to the main position after c4, d6, knight c3. So I expect this is really what I classify as the most important position in the Dutch. Now, I played knight to e4 here. Now, this is the move I recommend in my DVD, the Killer Dutch, and I think it's probably the best move here. I mean, I've played a5 in the past, which is also a possibility, and I've also played queen to e8, but knight to e4 looks to me like the best move. Now, my opponent played queen c2, which is not critical. The critical main line is knight takes e4. When I have an interesting improvement on some previous games that I'm waiting to wheel out, I'm not going to give it away because I'm sure I'll get a chance to play it at the British. Anyway, after knight to e4, my opponent played queen to c2, which looks very logical, but I think black's doing fine. After knight takes, my opponent played b takes c3, which I also consider in my DVD. The idea is that white wants to play e4. Now, the one rule you've got to remember in the Dutch is you have to meet the move e4 with e5, otherwise you're going to get a worse position. So in this position, I've got to prepare this move e5 here. If I don't prepare this move e5, then my opponent's just going to go e4 and he's going to be better. So knight to c6, the logical move. And if my opponent plays something like d5 here, well then I can continue with knight to a5. And the problem that white has in this line is his c-pawn is very weak. Anyway, after knight to c6, my opponent played e4. And I continue with e5. So already I think black's doing fine here. I actually think if anyone's better in this position, black's actually better. I had this against Shirov once, this position. I got a very good position against him, only to go wrong at a later moment. But black's definitely not doing worse here, because these c-pawns that white has are a serious weakness. So my opponent took on f5 now. I played bishop takes f5. And now my opponent played queen to e2. And yeah, like I said, I think if anyone's better, black's better, just because white's got his weak c-pawns. I'm not really worried about any pressure on the b file, because my bishop's covering the b1 square. It's actually a very good piece on f5. Anyway, I went bishop to f6, defending e5. My opponent took on e5. Now I played an interesting idea. I'd normally play d takes e5 here without the shadows thought, and again I think black's doing fine here. After, for example, something like rook to d1. Oh, just jump forwards a little bit there, bear with me when I go back. So we'll go back to e5, e takes f5, bishop takes queen e2, bishop f6, d takes e5, and now if I'd have played d takes e5, what would have happened? Well, something like rook to e1, queen to e8. I normally like putting my queen on this square rather than e7 because the queen can come over to g6 or h5 where it's well positioned. And now my opponent might play something like knight to d2, queen to g6, knight to e4, bishop to e7. And this could have happened in the game where I think white's c-pawns are much more of a weakness compared to my e-pawn. And my pieces are all quite actively placed, so I think black's doing fine in this position. But after d takes e5, I decided to play knight takes e5 in this game, which I thought would give me a stable, nice advantage. I'm not sure if I am better here, but it's quite an interesting idea. For example, if my opponent took on e5, he can't go knight to d4 now, which is a move he'd normally like to play against this, because I go bishop to d3, winning the exchange. So after knight takes e5, my opponent decided to capture on e5, and now I played bishop takes e5. So my idea here was just to play against white's c-pawns and prove that my bishops are going to be very strong. My opponent played the most critical move, bishop takes b7. I played rook to b8. Bishop takes c3 after bishop takes b7 was another possibility, but I think this leads to an equalish position. I wanted to keep more pieces on the board, so I played rook to b8, giving me better winning chances. Bishop to d5 check, king to h8. And even though I'm pawn down, white's got some problems defending his pawn on c3. Now, my opponent played bishop to e3 here. Maybe a more critical choice would have been queen to e3. This holds on to the pawn, but it also leaves white's bishop on c1 as a very bad piece. Now, I have a couple of moves here. I was thinking about playing maybe c5, the idea of queen coming over to a5, or maybe queen to d7, just the idea of playing either queen to a4, or maybe even c6 at some point. Well, I've got very good compensation here, just because white's quite a bit behind in development here. It's hard to see how he's going to get a piece in the game. I can also maybe put something on the e-file at a later stage, annoying white's queen. So all my pieces very active, extremely good compensation for the pawn. So after king to h8, my opponent played bishop to e3, so now I capture on c3. My opponent played rook to c1, and now I played bishop to f6. So my general idea here is to continue with c5. When I have a good position, because my rook's ready to infiltrate on the b2 square. For example, if white plays bishop to a7, this would have been a mistake. I just go rook to b2 and something like queen to e3. Now I go c5, and I think black's on the verge of winning here. I mean, white's bishop on a7 is in danger of being trapped, and also I've just got a strong plan of plonking my bishop on d4 and putting a lot of pressure on white's king side, so he can't take on a7. So after bishop to f6, my opponent played a good move. He went c5. This is the best move in the position. He's got to try to open up his bishops and stop me from playing c5. I captured on c5, the best response, threatening the bishop on d5, and now my opponent played a slight error. He went rook takes c5. This was a mistake. From here on, actually, white's position starts to go downhill. The problem white's got here is that his bishop on d5 is a bit loose, and he's got a problem sort of guarding this bishop. So his pieces are all slightly hanging now. He should have played after d takes c5, rook f d1, when the position is roughly equal here. And yeah, this is a much better move, rook f d1. Rook takes c5 is a bit rash. And now played rook to b2. I was considering playing c6 here, which is a crafty little move. If the bishop takes this, then I go bishop to d3, winning material, but I was worried about bishop to c4 here. And then if I go something like rook to b2, my opponent just plays queen to f3, and all of a sudden my pieces are hanging, like my bishop on this square, my pawn on c6, and also white no longer has this loose piece on d5. I've actually helped move it away and move c6. So after rook takes c5, rook to b2 is a much better move. My opponent now played queen to c4. If he goes queen to a6, well, I do similar in game, bishop to e7. So queen to c4 looks like a better square if he's trying to hold his pieces over here together a bit more. Oh, the queens don't move like that. But again, he's still got some slight problems. Now I played a good move here. I went bishop to e7. It looks a bit unnatural moving my bishop away from this strong diagonal. But the problem is that white's rook on c5 is a very weak piece. He's now got to decide where to move it. Well, he has to really go to b5 here. Rook to a5 and run into c6 when I'm threatening the rook and the bishop. So rook to b5 was played, and now rook to c2, a good move. Again, keeping the pressure up against white's hanging pieces. Queen to a4, So the best square for the queen. And now in this position, I actually think I played the best move. This is my best move in the tournament, I think, here, that I actually played here. This is a critical position, and it looks like black has a number of tempting options here. What should black play? I mean, it's a very complicated position. Well, first of all, if I play c6, this doesn't actually work because white had the counter tactic, bishop takes c6. And now if rook takes c6, rook takes f5. And white ends up pawn up at the end of the complications. So this is white's plan. If I played c6, if I go bishop to d3, another natural looking move. I was worried my opponent would just play rook to d1 here. And if I take on b5, he takes on c2. Again, white's doing absolutely fine here. So what do I play here? Well, I had a long think, and I realised that even though my rook looks quite active on this c2 square, it's always hanging in a number of variations. The queen takes c2. And the main problem that white has here, he's faced with a lot of threats. He's faced with c6, bishop d7, bishop to d3. So a lot of his pieces are hanging. So the main problem I have is my rook. So I now played rook to c3, which I think is definitely the best move I played in the tournament. Even though it's not an out-winning combination, this really leaves white in a dilemma. I think white's probably lost here now. White has no way to defend against all my threats. I mean, you can never play rook to d1 now as well because I play bishop to c2. So after this move, rook to c3, I think I'm probably well on top of things, but of course I mess things up. Now my opponent played bishop to b3. He had a long think here, and I think he realised he's also in trouble. For example, I was calculating one line, bishop to d4, when I would have played rook to a3, and now queen to d1, rook to d3, queen to a1. Now the good move, rook takes d4. The idea, queen takes d4, c6 with a winning position. So hence why my opponent played bishop to b3. And now I play bishop to d7. So this is the point. I'm going to win the exchange. My opponent played rook to d1, and now I played the interesting move queen to e8. I worked out the following combination, but I mean, I think this is actually a mistake, queen to e8. I probably should just take on b5 and play something like queen to c8. I was a bit worried about the placing my rook on c3, but black's going to be a bit better here. After queen to e8, my opponent played queen to d4. This is the only move I saw that he had, and I calculated the following combination. Rook takes c3. So it's quite complicated. If I take on b5 immediately, my opponent takes on c3, and he's doing fine here. So I calculate after queen d4, rook takes e3 is the move to play. If white catches back on e3, now I just take on b5 and I've won a piece. So he has to play after rook takes e3, queen takes d7, and now rook to the e1 check. So if rook takes rook, I'll win the queen on d7. So he has to go king to g2, and now rook takes f2 check. So this is a move I banged out. And originally I thought this was winning, but I forgot about white's next move. White can't capture on f2 because I have bishop to c5 check. I'm releasing my queen on e8, and this actually leads to checkmate. You can calculate the following variations if you wish. My opponent, after rook takes f2, went king to h3, and this is a move I actually missed when I went queen e8 earlier on. I didn't realise that I couldn't play queen to h5 check because the rook takes h5. So my opponent's defended quite well actually, even though all the problems he's had. So I went bishop to f8, and now my opponent should have gone queen to d5. This would have been his best move, but luckily he was in time trouble here. I mean, for example, I have to go queen to c8 check, and now he goes queen back to d7. And I can play on a bit here, but with rook to e8, but I think he's got very good drawing chances here because my rook, after something like this, is very badly placed on c8. So this is his mistake, but he was in time trouble, and I got a very promising ending after queen takes e8, rook takes e8, bishop to c4, guarding e2, and now bishop d6. And after rook to d5, rook to e4, rook d4, rook here. Now he played a mistake, rook to d2. Okay, it's opposite kind of bishop ending. I am pawn up, but I've got a lot of problems to win this if he doesn't give me another pawn. He should have just gone rook to d5, and then I had to go something like rook to e6. Well, I've got good winning chances, but he's got a lot of ways to win. In this position, after rook d2, I captured another pawn like this, and basically it's took me a while to win this position, but I think I'm always going to be winning 2 pawns in an opposite kind of bishop ending. As long as you keep the rooks on the board, should be easy enough to win. And the problem white has, he's got this major weakness on g3 that is on a dark square, so my bishop's always going to line up against it, and white's going to have trouble defending it. I haven't really got much more time to show you the rest. I'll quickly blitz out to show you what I did. So I slowly made progress with my king. Now I tied him down to the g pawn. I'm ready to advance my pawns. So my pawns slowly start rolling, and basically in the end I managed to pick up the a3 pawn. But basically the winning technique was to push his bishop to a bad square, so this is why this a5 move is very important. And then when his bishop's on a bad square, I can start attacking his pawns. And basically this was quite an easy winning ending for me, as my two outside passed pawns were too much for white to deal with. So I was obviously quite happy with that. They gave me a share of second prize, so they gave me a little bit of money to go home with. My opponent, I think, got himself in a bit of trouble in the opening there, so he can't really blame himself too much. He still defended resourcefully, just let himself a bit short in time. I think the best move, the move I was most happiest there, was this rook to c3 move, which is not obvious at all. Also a nice little combination of this king to g2, rook takes f2 check, was quite a nice combination, but I missed king to h3, so I was quite lucky I was still doing okay here. And then the endgame technique when my opponent was under time trouble, so he always had trouble to defend that. So anyway, a very pleasant tournament. Keith did well to win it, so well done Keith on successfully winning the title. I will have a look at my loss as soon as I find the score sheet for that, which was a very interesting game. I played like a bit of an idiot, but my opponent played very well. And yeah, good little tournament. So I hope you enjoyed that. I will try to now find an internet cafe so I can put it up online. Cheers then, until next time. Bye.